Ma'am, I think we have participants from outside Kerala.
Okay, fine. I just asked whether it can be bilingual or not. Yes, if participants from outside Kerala are there, I shall stick on to language, single language, okay?
And there's a small technical issue. We'll start the session in a short while. Good morning to one and all present here. Today, we are all gathered here on this virtual platform for the second session of the 16th two-day National Workshop on Research Methodology put forward by the Kerala Law Academy Law College Trivandrum in association with Center for Advanced Legal Studies and Research. I proudly welcome each one of you to this event. I now invite Ms. Nanma, student of First Sem LLM of Kerala Law Academy Law College, to officially welcome the guest of the session. Nanma, please.
Thank you, Kavya. A very good morning to all. Today, we all gathered here as part of the 16th National Workshop on Research Methodology program put forward by Kerala Law Academy Law College in connection with Center for Advanced Legal Studies and Research. Kerala Law Academy Law College, established in 1966 by the legal luminary, late Dr. N. Narayana Nair Sir, is a set of legal excellence in legal education, consultancy, research, and pioneering law reforms. As we move on to the second session, I am profoundly delighted to take this opportunity to introduce our chief speaker, Bindhu T.V, Associate Professor, Department of Education, University of Kerala. Bindhu ma'am secured first rank in MEd. She had teaching experience in IHRD, research officer in SCRT, HSST in chemistry, and currently Associate Professor in Department of Education. She has published over 78 research papers and 26 articles to her credit. We are fortunate to have Bindhu ma'am on this occasion. Now, without any further delay, let us call upon our honorable chief guest Bindhu ma'am to deliver a speech on the topic formulation of research hypothesis. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Nanma. Shall we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, all the participants and dignitaries in the virtual platform. Being a virtual platform, sometimes some hindrances may come due to the internet problems. Hope it will not be there for next 1 hour. Shall I share my screen, Nanma? Are you the?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
See, today I'm going to discuss a small part of research, but it is the most important part during the conduction of a research. That is nothing but hypothesis formulation. First of all, I want to discuss about when and why do lawyers do legal research. Even though I am taking this opportunity to discuss some of the research topic from this legal side, as being a non-legal person, I may not be able to discuss in detail. So I am going to discuss the concept formulation of hypothesis very well to you by using daily life examples, and it can be extended to your research at the end of this session. Okay. See, what is the primary aim of research? Whenever there is a problem faced by an individual or a society, we need to find answers to that, or we need to solve the problems. Whenever we face some questions in the legal side, that legal questions are to be answered, not by formal answering or hypothetical answering or logical answering by an individual. Instead, we need to dig more and more in the experiences received by the different lawyers and different cases in the history. And we need to analyze the results of the researchers as well as the explanations given by famous lawyers. We need to give a solution for the problem. Whenever we start facing a problem, whatever be the problem, see, suppose today you are expecting me at 11:30 in this platform for this lecture. At 11:30, when you are searching your platform, suppose I am not there. This is a problem for the organizers for conducting this seminar, because more than 70 or 80 participants are waiting for the presentation, but this person is not available. That is a problem faced by the organization. See, there is a problem. If it is in the research field, we need to find a solution for the problem. When we want to solve a problem, first of all, because of our old experiences and knowledge in the field of such problems, some solution will be coming into the mind of the person who is facing the problem. Here, suppose the person who is facing the problem is a researcher. Then this expected solution, the solution which is coming into our mind whenever we are facing a problem, is called a hypothesis. That is, hypothesis is not established at the start of the research. We need to substantiate the hypothesis at the end of the research. So at the beginning, depending upon the intellectual ability and logical reasoning, along with the experiences in the field concerned, a researcher can propose a tentative solution for the problem faced by the researcher. This tentative solution, which is coming into the mind of a researcher at the start or at the phase of facing a problem, PHASC phase, when we are facing a problem. This solution need to be checked, need to be verified, need to be established at the end of the research. That is why hypothesis is known as a tentative solution for the problem that we have faced. I think this much clear to you. Okay. Then in the legal side, we can define what is a legal research. See, it is a process used to identify and find the laws, including statutes, regulations, and court opinions that apply to the facts of a case. Here, the facts of a case is the problem, and to which we need to carry out a process for what? To identify and find the laws which may help us to solve the problem, which we call as a case here. And the process of finding an answer to this legal question or checking for legal precedent, whether the same case has already been solved by any of the court in India or in the world, we need to check the previous cases. This we call as a legal research. That is, legal research is always helping a lawyer aspects to find solution for the present problem as well as the problems which may arise in future. That is the advantage of research in the field of legal. The next slide is 4 slides are there which give you an idea about the different topics. Hope it has already been discussed in the first session. So I am not going into the details of these topics. Then we can come to the point where research begins. See, let me share my board. And whenever we are having a system and the system is expected to have a particular shape, say in this whiteboard, this shape is having some irregularities, and if the shape need to be a perfect one, we need to modify the inner shape into the outer perfect shape by manipulating something between this space. So a researcher needs to check what all things to be done in the inner circle in order to make it a perfect circle. The perfect circle is our solution and inner circle is a problem to me because it is not regular. I want to regularize it. In order to get a regular circle, I need to do something. That something will make a change in the shape of the inner circle. Therefore, whenever we are facing a problem, the problem can be considered as the inner circle. And this problem, when it is coming into my mind, I may think about a solution. So the researcher is always trying to find out a solution for a problem. We can discuss a simple daily life problem as we have discussed earlier. Suppose my husband is always reaching home at 5 p.m. Yesterday, he could not reach my house at 5 p.m. This is a problem for me. Then what will I do? I will expect that, or I will hypothesize that, or I will think that he is not reaching here at 5 p.m. because there may be a traffic block in between his workplace to my home. That is, traffic block is a reason with which he cannot reach at home at 5 p.m. Then what I need to do is another hypothesis may also in my mind that he may be attending some meeting. See, 2 hypotheses came into my mind that if there is a problem, the person is not reaching at home at 5 p.m. Therefore, the problem is there. Immediately, because of my previous experiences, I could get 2 solutions into my mind. One is the traffic block and other is a meeting in university or government office. These 2 hypotheses that I have formulated with respect to this problem need to be checked. In order to check, I need to frame some objectives. See what I need to do in order to check this. Then to find out whether my husband is in traffic block. Second one, whether my husband is attending some meeting after 5 o'clock. See, this is the objective, to find out whether my husband is in traffic block is an objective which is derived out of a hypothesis that I have formulated at the start of my problem. And this hypothesis came into my mind because in earlier days when he was late, when I asked him, he has given a reply that this is because of traffic block. See, this is the previous experiences that I have received. This previous experiences are, in the case of research, we are calling it as review of related literature, the studies which has already been carried out in the field of research. Okay, then in order to check, or in order to do this object is, what I need is, I need to use a tool. See, what will I do? I will take my phone and dial. Phone is the tool with which I am collecting the data. I am dialing my husband's number and collecting the replay. And this replay is the data that I have collected using a tool that we have used here is the telephone. And from the replay, when this replay to me have been analyzed, or suppose the replay is, I am here in the office, I need to complete some more works. See, both my hypotheses get rejected. Why? Because the data I have collected, when analyzed, I could conclude that both the hypotheses were wrong. Instead, I could get a solution. See, I got the solution, but it was not in tune with my hypothesis. Clear? And here we have discussed the concept of hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing but a tentative solution that is coming into the mind of a researcher when the researcher is facing some problem. And the condition is that the same problem should not be answered properly by a previous researcher. Suppose you are facing a legal problem, and if the problem is to be researched, then what you need to do is you need to look into the review of related literature or the case studies in the case of high courts or lower courts or the apex court, so that you can find whether such a case has already been dealt in the court and it has already been solved. Hope you got the idea of hypothesis. Okay. So where the research begins? When the researcher is understanding or facing a problem in the concerned field. If it is in the legal field, we call it as legal research. If it is in the field of education, we will call it educational research. If it is in the field of sociology, we will call it research in sociology, and so on. So where research begins means a research begins from a or with a problem. Whenever there is a problem, an intellectual person can think about a solution, and that tentative solution is called a hypothesis. How the hypothesis can be formulated is our agenda. Okay, see, I could feel a problem that child labor is having a great association with Right to Education Act in India. I want to have a critical analysis about these two things. See, there are two things. That is, one is the concept of child labor and the actual practice of child labor taking place in India. And the second is Right to Education Act in India, which is expected to be known by the educationists, curriculum framers, teachers, and anybody in the, including parents, and with which the student should get all the rights to get education from our country. See, I want to conduct a research by connecting these two concepts. Okay. See, I do have a problem. The problem is that I want to know whether there is any association between child labor and the awareness of Right to Education Act in India by the persons concerned. I want to conduct an analytical study. And when this problem is there in my mind, in order to deal it in detail, I need to frame some questions. Such questions which we need to frame during the process of research are called research questions. If the research questions are framed properly, and these research questions will be leading to the formulation of proper hypothesis, which will help you to frame objectives, which will help you to frame or prepare or adapt suitable tools, and which will help you to interpret the results. See? So we need to prepare some research questions with respect to the problem that I have faced. See, what are the characteristics or what all things to be kept in mind by the researcher in order to frame research questions? See, what is the problem to be solved? The researcher should be aware of the problem. It should not be in vague. It should be in clear-cut idea about the clear-cut definition of the problem should be there in the mind of the researcher. Then, who cares about this problem and why is this next question? Whenever you are framing research question, the research question should index or point out these things. What is the problem? For whom or who cares about this problem? Who are facing this problem? Child labor is a problem. Who is facing the problem? Children in our country or in the whole world is facing the problem of child labor. And why this problem? Why child labor is there? See, when the children are there in the position of a worker, the organization need to pay a small amount. This will lead to a large profit to the organization. That may be the reason. We need to find out what are the reasons behind this child labor. Then what have others done? Whether this problem has been addressed already by somebody else in this field of research or in the field of law, and what they have done for this problem. Sometimes the whole problem may not be addressed by any of the previous researchers. Sometimes a part of the problem may be addressed by some other researchers. Therefore, when we are doing research, we need to explain why this particular research, only the part of this problem has already been solved. And so I need to conduct this research. It is an essential research for the well-wishing part of children. And the fourth question is, what is your solution to the problem? That is, when we are going through the research, at the end of the research, we should get a solution. What will be, or what is the solution for the problem? Then how can you demonstrate that your solution is a good one? That is, at the end of the research, we should convince others that the solution that I have obtained through this particular research is a good one. That is, nobody need to conduct more research regarding this problem. Therefore, these 5 points are to be kept in mind while we are framing research questions. Then we can see the research questions that we need to frame for this particular title. Yes, this is the title, Child Labor and its Association with Right to Education Act in India, for which we need to frame some research questions. Framing research question is one of the requirement for framing good hypothesis. All the research questions need to be reframed in the form of hypothesis so that we can conduct the research by using proper hypothesis. See, the first question is, does child labor has anything to do with education? Because we are going to find out the association, whether there is an association between child labor and the Right to Education Act is our problem. So what we need to question is, does child labor has anything to do with the education? If there is anything to do with the education, we need to conduct the research and we need to find the solution. See, the second question is, does the type of parenting has any association with the indulgence of a child into labor situation? That is, whether there is any involvement of attitude or interest or some other profit motive among the parents of the children. That is why they are entering into child labor. First, whether the child labor is having any association with education. Second one is whether parents are having any involvement in the process of child labor. Then, is Right to Education Act helpful in preventing child labor? Whether the knowledge or awareness of Right to Education Act will be helping the society to keep the children away from child labor. That is the third question. See, the same similar question, is there any association between child labor and Right to Education Act? The first one is whether the Right to Education Act is helpful in preventing child labor. The second question is similar to that, but some difference when we are looking in the angle of a research. Is there any association between child labor and a Right to Education Act? Does Right to Education Act has a right implication in society? That is, we have framed this act, but whether the act produced is utilized by the society in a fruitful way is to be analyzed, because our title is nothing but a critical analysis. A critical analysis means we need to look into all the aspects of this concept of child labor as well as Right to Education Act. See, do the society have the right awareness about Right to Education Act? This word society can be split into, as we have discussed earlier, it can be split into those who are in the teaching field, those who are in the curriculum framing, whether the governments of different states know this act well, and whether anything has been done by the government to implement the act into the field of education. These things can be made into more and more questions, so that if you want to make a very deep analysis, if your studies at the PG level, you can stop here. But if it is for the PhD level, you can add more research questions, and all the research questions can be answered properly through the research. Okay. Then we can see the formal definition of hypothesis, what we have already discussed. See, what is hypothesis? It is nothing but logical prediction. What do you mean by prediction? Prediction means we are going to say that may happen or will happen in future. That is a prediction. And logical means the researcher need to use the logical reasoning from the review of related literature and the early experiences the researcher received from the field in order to make the prediction. That prediction is a hypothesis. Then from here we are predicting this logically. See, of certain occurrences, something had already been occurred. From the occurrences, we are going to predict the solution of the problem that we have faced, and we are planning to conduct the research in, without the support of empirical confirmation or evidence. See, this is important. When we are framing a hypothesis, we are not having any evidences or facts. It is purely from our brain. That is from our thoughts. That is logical prediction of certain occurrences without the support of empirical confirmation or evidence. See, then what will happen at the end of the research? Here we are not having any empirical confirmation or evidence, but during the research, we are trying to collect empirical evidences for the for establishing whether the prediction is correct or not. See, in our daily life example, what we have discussed earlier, I have collected the fact through a telephone call, and on the basis of fact, I could reject the hypothesis that I have made from my logic. From my logic, I have formulated a hypothesis that because of traffical block, he could not reach. But when I have collected data, that is when I got empirical evidences, the hypothesis could not be accepted because the facts are against my logical reasoning. See, in scientific terms, it is a tentative testable statement. Testable statement means at the start we are framing the hypothesis, but during the research we are testing it. Hypothesis testing is an important content to be understood by the researcher as when you are framing hypothesis about the relationship between two or more variables. There can be more variables in your study, minimum 2 variables in order to establish a relationship. But in order to compare something, we need only 1 variable. If you want to find a relationship, you need more than 1 variable. The variable can be classified into 2 as dependent variable and independent variable. See, in this title, we can check Child Labor and Right to Education Act in India. The implementation of Right to Education Act in India, whether it leads to a reduction in the number of children who are engaged in labor. That is, child labor depends upon the implementation of Right to Education Act. The number of children involving in the field of work or labor is getting reduced due to the proper implementation of Right to Education Act in India. Got the point? Therefore, child labor is depending upon the awareness or implementation of Right to Education Act in India. Therefore, Right to Education Act in India is considered as the independent variable, which leads to a change in a dependent variable. Due to the change which is taking place in one of the variable, which can be manipulated by the researcher. Researcher can change. Suppose our teachers are not having proper awareness about Right to Education Act in India. I can have another research where I can make a module or a package which is helping the teachers to understand more about Right to Education Act in India. And when this independent variable is manipulated by the researcher, there will be a change in the dependent variable, that is child labor. So whenever we are thinking about a hypothesis, sometimes we may think about two variables which are correlated with each other. Okay, when I am discussing about types of hypothesis, where we need to discuss all these things once more. Okay, hope these 4 slides are very much understood by you. That is what is where we start a research. Whenever we face a problem, we need to start a research. Then when we face a problem, we need to give an intellectual solution for the problem. The intellectual solution that is coming into the mind of the researcher due to the previous experiences and intelligence or logic is called a hypothesis. This hypothesis is therefore we can call as a logical prediction. This prediction is not fact-based or no empirical evidences are there for this prediction. The prediction is purely from our thoughts, and sometimes it may be giving you an idea about the prediction of relationship between 2 or more variables. Okay, then what are the characteristics of a good hypothesis? See, we are predicting some solution for the problem that we have faced. So the hypothesis that we are formulating should have a very high power of prediction. If the prediction is wrong or the prediction is not helping the problem to get solved, what it indicates means the researchers reading about the review of related literature, awareness about the studies which has already been carried out in the field, or the logical reasoning ability of the researcher is not up to the mark, or he or she is not able to conduct a research with respect to this problem. Then see, when the solution is proposed by the researcher in the form of a hypothesis, then we are going to collect empirical evidences. This empirical evidences or the observable things should be very close to the prediction. That is, whenever we are going to observe something, if we are doing or preparing or formulating the hypothesis in a logical fashion, it will be very close to the things to be observed in due course of the research. Then the third is simplicity. Whatever be the statement we are proposing in the form of hypothesis should be simple and should be understandable by others. Don't make complications or fill more ideas or concepts or solutions to the same problem in a single hypothesis. If you are having more than one hypothesis or more than one idea to be considered for solving the problem, we need to express it in simple different hypotheses, and all the hypotheses can be tested during the procedure of research. Clarity. Simplicity means you need not make it complex. Clarity means it should be clear in terms of objectives to be framed in future. After formulating the hypothesis, the researcher need to frame some objectives which will help the researcher to collect the empirical evidences and observations which may help to solve the problem. If the hypothesis is not clearly stated at this stage, it will become very difficult for the researcher to frame the objectives. Suppose we have two hypotheses. Sometimes we may be able to, or we may not be, able to frame more than two objectives. That objectives will be specific, making the researcher to think specifically in order to check or test the hypothesis. And the hypothesis should be testable. What do you mean by testability? Testability means whenever you are formulating a hypothesis, see, in the last title we have said child labor is having a close association with the Right to Education Act in India. Then these two variables need to be associated. That is the title. Therefore, the hypothesis that I need to frame should reflect this. Child labor will be associated with Right to Education Act in India. Then this association need to be tested. I need to get or collect data from the field which may classify the persons who are involved in the process of education into persons with high awareness on Right to Education Act, average awareness, and low awareness. Therefore, we are getting three groups. Then these three groups are dealing some of the children who are moving to child labor. Then we can find out a statistical analysis can be carried out in order to find the association between these two. That the probability or the possibility of testing the hypothesis is known as testability. Every hypothesis should be testable. In the case of legal researches, you can carry out three different types of researches. One is purely qualitative researches, and the second one is a mixed method researches where both qualitative and quantitative aspects are there. And the third one is quantitative research. In the case of qualitative researches, usually we are not framing hypothesis because we are not testing the hypothesis using statistical analysis. But some qualitative researchers in your field also, there are certain researchers where the researchers framed some hypothesis that is just to help them work towards the solution of the problem. That we call as working hypothesis. Then see, a prediction power should be there. It should be very close to the observable things. It should be simple and clear. It should be testable. And it should be in tune with the problem faced by the researcher, relevant to the problem faced by the teacher or the researcher. Any hypothesis should give an idea where we need to move to solve the problem. Then specific and objectivity. Objectivity means whoever be the person who is conducting the research in the same field can get the same result if we are testing the same hypothesis by another person. Whenever there is 2 different persons or 100 different persons carrying out the same research by using this particular hypothesis, this will not change. That is objectivity. Then conceptual clarity. As we have discussed in the case of relevance of the problem or relevant to problem, we are dealing with a particular concept which gives us a problem or which raises a problem into my mind. These concepts, see, in our case, it is Child Labor and Right to Education Act in India should have clear to the mind of the researcher when this particular hypothesis is read by the researcher or any other researcher who is in the field. So these are the characteristics of it. This we have already discussed how to frame a hypothesis. Hypothesis should always be in a predictive form, and it is not in the present tense form, it is in a futuristic form. It will be like that because of this reason. If there is if we have framed the research questions properly, see, if we have framed the research questions properly, we can convert this into proper hypothesis. Does child labor has anything to do with the education? See, child labor can do many things with education. Can that if in future it will be like that, or it can be predicted like that. These words are giving importance to the statement of the hypothesis. See, how to develop a hypothesis. See, we have already discussed this. First, we have framed so many research questions which may lead to a thought and which will help the researcher to frame a prediction by using the logical reasoning and the previous experiences by himself or by other researchers in the same field. Therefore, writing a hypothesis begins with a research question. Whenever a research question is there, it is very easy for you to frame the hypothesis. Then, before conducting the research or before writing the hypothesis, you need to do some pilot study or preliminary research, which will help you to frame the hypothesis, which will help you to solve the problem. Then formulate your own hypothesis. After writing a hypothesis, when we are reading the hypothesis again and again, you may feel that it is losing clarity. It is not simple. This is not in the form of a testable statement. If you are feeling like that, after formulating the hypothesis, you need to refine your hypothesis accordingly. Then you can phrase your hypothesis in three different ways that we will discuss later. And for statistical analysis, you need to frame null hypothesis. That will also be discussed later. So while developing a hypothesis, what all things to be kept in mind is read carefully the review of related literature, frame proper research questions, and do a preliminary research regarding the topic to be studied. Then formulate your hypothesis. If need, you can refine the hypothesis and then phrase the hypothesis. This is in any of the different types of hypothesis. See, next is what are the different types of hypothesis that you can use. See, this is we can discuss one by one. See, what is a simple hypothesis? From the adjective given here, simple means the hypothesis is simple, means it is not complex. That means the parameters or variables that you are using in the hypothesis is directly giving a clear idea about the problem, or it will help you to do the research very easily. See, in the case of simple hypothesis, we will have two variables, V1 and V2. As we have discussed earlier, suppose V1 is the dependent variable and V2 is the independent variable. There are only two variables in simple hypothesis, and you are finding out the relationship between these two variables. And when the correlation coefficient R, suppose it is 0.80, I don't know whether you can understand. I hope you can understand because you have already done at least a simple piece of research. Suppose the correlation coefficient is found to be 0.80. It indicates that whenever you are trying to make a change in the independent variable, a corresponding change will be there in the dependent variable. So then what will be the hypothesis? See how the simple hypothesis can be written by a researcher. There will be, see, we have discussed about this word. There will be a significant relationship. This shows the testability of this word shows the testability of the hypothesis. There will be a significant relationship between variable 1 and variable 2 If it is among lawyers, you can write among lawyers. Suppose the study is conducted among lawyers, you can write among lawyers. See, what we have done is we have find out the relationship. What we are testing is whether the relationship is significant or not. That we have discussed during the discussion about the qualities of a good hypothesis testability. That is, we need to find out the relationship. There will be a significant relationship. Relationship is tested by calculating the coefficient of correlation. And from the value of coefficient of correlation, we can say whether it is significant or not. Such type of hypotheses are called a simple hypothesis. See, simple hypothesis is predicting the relationship between two variables. One is the dependent variable and other is the independent variable. There is a significant relation. There will be a significant relationship between child labor and awareness about Right to Education Act in India by the secondary school teachers in Kerala. See, that is the complete hypothesis when it is. Then next is complex hypothesis. As we could understood what do you mean by simple hypothesis, here we are having only two variables. If there are more than two variables, that is either two dependent variables and one independent variable, or we can have two dependent variable and two independent variable. That is, if there are more than two variables, we need to write an integrated form of hypothesis, which is known as complex hypothesis. See, in the case of complex hypothesis, see the same variable. Suppose we can think about teachers in 2 or 3 different genders and child labor and Right to Education Act, awareness on right to education. See, there are 3 variables. One is a nominal variable and the other 2 are quantifiable variables. If these 3 variables are related, then we need to write a complex hypothesis. What should be the complex hypothesis? There will be a significant difference between male, female, and transgender teachers when the relationship between the child labor and awareness on right to education of these teachers are considered. That is the hypothesis. That is, we are considering all the variables under study for framing the hypothesis. Therefore, it will be between 2 or more independent variable and 2 or more dependent variable. Hope you could understand what is the difference between simple hypothesis and a complex hypothesis. Next is working or research hypothesis. This is what we have discussed when in legal research you can see working or research hypothesis. Now it is very easy to understand by you because specific factors of the population is considered here while framing the hypothesis. That is, the prediction statement is based on the factors associated with the population in which the problem arises. That is working hypothesis. This will help the researcher to think about the specific factors of the population. That is why we call it as working research hypothesis. Okay. Next is directional hypothesis. See, simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, working hypothesis, and the fourth one is directional hypothesis. From the name itself, it is clear that directional means the hypothesis is giving an idea that the problem solution is having a particular direction. See, a simple example, boys are better than girls in their logical intelligence. See, a direction is there. Boys are having better intelligence than girls. But the same thing can be expressed in the form of non-directional hypothesis or null hypothesis. There is no significant difference between boys and girls in their intelligence. See, here the researcher is not having any partiality towards the solution. But in the first case, the researcher is expecting that boys are possessing better intelligence. Why the researcher is framing such a hypothesis? From 1960 or 1900 onwards, so many researchers have been conducted in the field of intelligence, and almost all researchers are showing that boys are possessing high intelligence than girls. That is why, in order to avoid the word high, the researcher said boys and girls are differing in their intelligence. To express the direction of relationship between variables, there is a positive relationship between two variables, there is a negative relationship between two variables, and they are possessing higher intelligence, they are possessing lower achievement, and students studying in law college are having high intelligence than those who are studying in arts and science colleges. Such type of hypotheses are called a direction. The reverse of this is known as non-directional hypothesis. The researcher is not having a bias towards the solution of the problem when they are framing non-directional hypothesis. See, what are the different types of hypothesis? Simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, working, directional, and non-directional, and null hypothesis. Then we can move. Null hypothesis, there is no significant relationship, no, there is no partiality or bias. See, alternative hypothesis. See, you need to understand these two. Null hypothesis, there is no significant difference between boys and girls in their intelligence. That is a null hypothesis. And in the case of an alternative hypothesis, we can write there is a difference between intelligence of boys and girls. Then directional hypothesis, boys are having better intelligence than girls. That is the difference. Null hypothesis is there is no difference. Alternative hypothesis, there is difference. And directional hypothesis is a hypothesis where we are pointing out the direction. That are the three different types of hypothesis. Then next is associative hypothesis. See, whenever there is a cause, this cause will be leading to an effect. See, suppose I am giving you more and more daily life examples in order to make you understand the concept of associative hypothesis, say. Then, because of this cause, what is the cause? The speaker is giving more and more daily life examples to make the participant understand about the associative hypothesis. See, as a result, the participants are getting a clear concept about associative hypothesis. So what is the effect? Understanding about the concept is the effect, and the way with which the speaker is trying to make the participant understand the concept is the cause. Therefore, such a cause-effect relationship. See, when the sky is having full of black cloud, we can expect a heavy rain. That is the hypothesis. How this hypothesis is framed? Because in many of the previous days, this had happened. So I made the hypothesis. Then what is the cause of this rain? The cause of the rain is the heavy cloud. This heavy cloud is the cause and rain is the effect. If in a research, we are trying to connect the cause and effect by each other, we need to frame associative hypothesis. Okay. Same thing with the concept. Then we have discussed about research question, how to write hypothesis. See, which we have already discussed. What who, where, when, how, and why. These questions are to be written in the form of research questions before writing hypothesis. When you are writing questions based on these question words, this will lead to make you write simple, complex, directional, non-directional, null, alternative, associative, and causal hypothesis. If you are giving futuristic solutions or answers to this, what is the effect? That may be the effect. That may be the, that can be the effect is the hypothesis. What is the effect is the research question. You need to substitute the answer instead of what, then you will get the hypothesis. See, another title. This is one of the title which has already been done in your field, that is diverse and gender justice under Muslim law in India. See the research questions. Does justice and equality in matters of divorce are discriminatory for Muslim wives? This is the question. See, does justice in matters of divorce are discriminatory? If you are removing this question word, justice and equality in matters of divorce can be discriminatory, may be discriminatory, will be discriminatory for Muslim wives will be the hypothesis. Thus, if you are analyzing your problem with respect to these question words, you can frame so many research questions. And if these research questions are to be analyzed properly in order to make hypothesis in the form of hypothesis statements. See the hypothesis, Muslim women's right on divorce is not given due recognition. This is my expectation. And this expectation is a hypothesis. This hypothesis need to be tested with respect to the legal aspects which are available in our country. So what we need to analyze is whether our legal aspects are explaining what all rights on divorce is available for Muslim women. If you are critically analyzing this question, you can find there are certain loopholes. Then as a result of your research work, you can discuss the matter with experts in the field of legality, and you can have focus group discussion, and you can suggest how this loophole can be filled in by using suitable logical reasoning. Thus, your research will contribute to the modification of existing laws or implementation of laws properly and make the society use their rights properly and make the society to understand what illegality is there towards me from the environment. All these things can be a solution for your problem. So in conclusion, we can say whenever we are going to carry out a research in the field of law, we need to analyze the law. We need to understand how the law is applying in the field and whether new modifications are to be carried out in the existing law or anything to be amended in the acts in order to get a better life for the people of society, for which we need to understand the problems or topics under research, or we need to analyze the different topics of research properly in different fields. And this analysis should make a problem in your mind, or this analysis of these topics will need to raise some problem in your mind. And that problem should be analyzed by using the question words. And these question words need to be framed into various research questions. And that research questions are to be made into or formulated into proper working hypothesis or simple hypothesis or complex hypothesis accordingly. Whatever be the need of the field, we need to make such type of hypothesis. And these hypotheses are to be tested, and we need to propose certain solution to the problem. Thus, we need to do research in your field, and which should be beneficial for the society. Hope you could get a meager idea about hypothesis formulation and explore more, read more and more books related to hypothesis formulation and research in the field of law, and conduct very good research in the field, so that the society is always receiving their legal rights without any fail. Thank you. Thank you for your patient listening. Okay. Thank you, Kavya.
Thank you so much, Bindhu ma'am, for your words of wisdom. I'm sure it'll definitely help us in our future endeavors. Now, we'll have a short 5 minutes Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you may raise your hand in the Zoom app so that we can unmute you and then you can ask your questions. Anybody?
Only after forming hypothesis, doubts will be arising. Not listening this session. If they are already formulated some hypothesis or in the path of research, they will have doubts. Yes, please. I am not competent enough to formulate hypothesis in the field of research in law, but I shall try my level best to help you in thinking about your hypothesis. If you have any query, you don't worry. You can be asked at any time. You can collect my number from the organizers, and you can ask any query regarding hypothesis or regarding research whenever, and feel free to ask. Okay, don't worry. In such a platform, it is not comfortable for participants to ask questions. That I know. Okay, anyway, anybody? Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. Jeet Singh Man, you may ask the question.
Okay, thank you. See, Professor, there are certain doubts regarding creation of hypothesis. Whether hypothesis is created by the objectives or objectives are created by the hypothesis, number one. Number two, do you think every hypothesis is required to be proved or disapproved or examined? I'm talking about causal relationship.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See, both these questions are always there in the field of research. So it is everywhere it is debatable. Then I can explain it in my own view. See, in the example that I have explained at the beginning, that is, my husband is not reaching home at 5 p.m. This is a problem faced by me. When a problem is faced by a researcher, if the researcher brain is intellectual and the researcher brain is having a sufficient knowledge about the researches which has already been carried out in the field, a logic will rise in the mind or brain of the researcher and will tell you a solution without any fail. See, suppose I am getting down at 11 o'clock and 11:30, I have this session. I need to drive 20 minutes from home to here. When in between, suppose I am facing a traffic block. See, I have obliged to you that I need to take a class at 11:30. This is the problem, no? Immediately, a solution will come into my mind. One is that I can stop my car in between and connect from the car itself without reaching department. That solution will be coming into my mind. Then another solution, I can contact the organizers and let them give me a freedom to take a 10 minutes extra or join time 10 minutes late. These two are my assumptions. Then in order to check this, I will be making a call to the organizer and asking them, I am in block. I may be reaching a department only at 11:40. Shall I start at 11:40, or are you prompt in starting the session at 11:30? Then I shall start from the way itself. These two are this is the objectives that I have framed out of my hypothesis. But in certain contexts, therefore, whether the researcher is intellectual or not is a condition with which, and depending upon the nature of the research also, in certain contexts, you may not be able to frame hypothesis at the start. At the start, you need to, if you are going to conduct a research in a new field, sometimes you may not be able to frame the hypothesis at the start. You can frame objectives first. In due course of time, when you are going through the research by analyzing or doing the work related to objectives, you can get some guess. Why we need to frame hypothesis after objectives in that cases? Because at the beginning, we are not having any previous experiences in the field to frame a hypothesis. That is, if sufficient RRL is not available with respect to a researcher to be conducted, you do have the freedom to frame the objectives. No problem. That this question is depending upon the research forum. In Kerala University, Department of Education is always prompting the students to write hypothesis first, then objectives. But some of the cases that I am receiving for evaluation, especially in North India, they are writing objectives first and hypothesis second. Both of them are having their own arguments. And to me, an intellectual people can get a tentative solution. That solution may or may not be correct. That is second thing. But an intellectual people, human being will always be getting a solution in the mind if thinking properly about the problem as well as about the previous experiences. And the second question is regarding the establishment of hypothesis, whether it is right, wrong, or if you are framing a hypothesis, if it is not as a working hypothesis, you need to establish the tenability of hypothesis. If it is for working hypothesis, you need not establish. But if it is a hypothesis, which is a tentative solution for the problem you have framing at the start, you need to establish the tenability. Right? Clear?
Okay, next, Mr. Satya CA can unmute and ask the question.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, add up on the, I have one more clarification. Suppose that my hypothesis is the answer to my research. At the end, that is my answer to that research. Is it correct?
We are framing the hypothesis as a tentative solution for the problem that I am going to research. No? At the end, why do we conduct this research? In order to find a solution for the problem. So at the end of the research, either the problem you have formulated in the form of hypothesis may be substantiated. Tenability of the hypothesis means substantiated fully or partially. Always it need not be fully substantiated. If the hypothesis is not fully substantiated by your research, your research may be continued either by yourself or by another researcher in order to find a better solution. So we cannot say ending a research means solution to a problem. Ending a research means leading to new problems. So new researchers are arising at the end of every research. That is why at the end of the research, we are always the researchers are proposing research, further research. Problems for further research will be written by every researcher, because during the research only the researcher can find there are so many other problems which is related to this. That can be highlighted at the end of the research report so that the next researcher can explore more, or you can also explore more in further research. That is either in PDF or in PhD. If you are a PG student, you can explore in your PhD study or in PDF or simple researches, any form research, or you can do it again and again. So we cannot say ending the research means solution to the problem that we have faced, especially in law. Okay.
Okay.
Any
Any other
more
questions?
queries?
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank
all.
you very much, the
Now we are winding
organizers,
up
for
this.
inviting me for such a wonderful experience, because I am from the field of education, you are from the field of law. So it is, if it is a face-to-face interaction, I would have been happy. In this online platform, only if you are interacting and your faces are not visible to me, so the level of happiness will be less. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll definitely plan a interactive session someday. Now I welcome Ms. Aparna, student of first sem LLM from Kerala Law Academy Law College, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kavya. Good afternoon. It seems to be a great honor to propose a vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this workshop a very resounding success. It is such an honor for me to get the opportunity to thank all the dignitaries on behalf of Kerala Law Academy. First of all, I would like to thank our chief guest, Dr. Bindhu T.V, Associate Professor, Collegiate Education, University of Kerala, for making an excellent presentation on formulation of research hypothesis and making this workshop a very meaningful and interesting one. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us a greater view of this concept. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to express my gratitude to Advocate Nagaraj Naran sir, Director Kerala Law Academy, Professor Harithan Kesa, Principal Kerala Law Academy, Professor Anil Kumar Kesa, Professor G. Anil Kumar sir, Professor Ajita ma'am, Assistant Professor Dr. Dikshna Saraswati ma'am, and other organizing committee members of this workshop. I am happy to express a vote of thanks to all who attended the workshop and had made a grand success. I thank all of you for your cordial experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. With this, we conclude our second session of the 16th two-day National Workshop on Research Methodology. I extend my thanks to all those who made this discussion a fruitful one with your valuable contributions. I humbly request everyone to attend the third session of the workshop scheduled at 2 p.m. Thank you, everyone. With this is Kavya Mohan signing off. Thank you.
Hey, Kavya, thank you.